A very good evening and welcome to this edition of The Fourth Estate. Charles Mwangusha Mpagi, and tonight in the studio, let me introduce President of the Uganda Federal Alliance, Betty Olive Turuomwe Namisango Kamye. Always a pleasure to have you.
You're very good at that. Thank you, Charles, and good evening, listeners, viewers.
Let me also introduce from Roanoke College in Virginia, Professor Joshua Rubongoya. Very nice to have you.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, and good evening.
Professor Rubongoya is a professor of political science. Is
Yes,
that correct?
Yes, it's...
Very nice to have you. And you presented a paper the other day at Makerere University.
I did. I presented a paper on the movement legacy and its impact on the parties in Uganda. It was fairly well attended, and I think the media has enjoyed the dissemination of its information.
I've been listening to a lot of discussion lately where people are trying as much as possible to walk away from identifying the National Resistance Movement as a political party and insisting it's not a party but an organization. We were attending a function a few weeks ago, the other week I think, with Betty Kamye, where Stephen Beraham-Stade, the Member of Parliament for Bulisa County, was insisting ours is not a party, it's an organization. And I've had it repeatedly at different fora over the last few weeks. I don't know what the mission is. And of course my colleague, Chris Obore. Chris, always a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thanks, Charles.
Let me start by saying this for my benefit and Chris's benefit. So I'm cutting out the guests for this part of the discussion. I was in Mbarara yesterday, and a lot of fans of the Fourth Estate, and they asked me to deliver greetings. So I thought I should deliver those greetings directly to you.
It is they are the reason why we come here every Sunday. Otherwise, this job is a thankless job, especially from those who hold the power. You can get into trouble.
Yes. Let me say that every day you go out there and find someone who listens and watches this show, and they tell you, and they give you feedback, both criticism, positive and negative. It is important and makes the show better every time. So we encourage you to keep giving us that kind of feedback, and thank you for the support. For the umpteenth time, at Makerere University on Friday, former Prime Minister, former Secretary General of the National Resistance Movement, Amama Mbabazi, announced that he will announce when he will announce his future plans and how that will impact the political landscape in the country. But at the same time, Amama Mbabazi was at Makerere University at the swearing-in ceremony of the guild leadership. Actually thought we'd have one of the guild leaders, either the outgone or the new team, join us in the discussion, but we were not able to find someone to come in on time. At that ceremony where the speaker was announced as the guest of honor, but he ended up being the guest of honor. And also the day before, on Thursday, David Sejusa, formerly known as Tinyafuza, former coordinator of intelligence agencies, was at Makerere University, courting the student population and using Makerere as the center to stage an outreach to the student community. Will the two gentlemen actually alter the landscape of the 2016 general elections? That's the big question we're asking on the Fourth Estate tonight. Let me start with the professor here. You said you were discussing the movement legacy, and one of the major statements that Amama Mbabazi made was, I founded the movement together with my colleagues. I have no intentions of leaving the National Resistance Movement. And they say it's not a party but an organization. Political parties are struggling on their own.
Yes.
Can Amama Mbabazi, David Sejusa, impact or alter the landscape as we move towards the 2016 elections, and how?
That's a very good question. Let me begin with Sejusa. In my opinion, Sejusa is irrelevant to the politics of Uganda and irrelevant to what will happen in 2016. And I say this on several grounds. We have to first of all figure out what is it that makes a candidate viable, or what is it that makes a politician capable of changing the nation or moving the nation in a particular direction. First of all, how much support does Sejusa have? Second, how much financial, or for that matter, how much money does he have to lead a movement that might indeed begin to make a difference in the politics of Uganda tomorrow? Third, to what extent is he credible and to what extent is he legitimate? When you put those questions on the table, you realize that Mr. Sejusa left the country, went abroad, was in exile, returned, visited the State House in Entebbe, got out of the State House in Entebbe, and we have never figured out whether he's in the NRM or out of the NRM. We have never figured out what his vision is for the future of this country. We have never figured out what exactly Sejusa believes in and what he does not believe in. And in my opinion, that has somewhat led to a decline in the believability and the legitimacy or even the credibility of the man, and the extent to which he can change the country, therefore, is in question. If we shift the focus to Mr. Amama Mbabazi, I might have the same questions for Mr. Amama Mbabazi, except that there's a slight difference in how Amama Mbabazi has tried to reorganize or to pivot his politics. The question still remains in the minds of most people: will he announce? Will he not announce? Is he running? Is he not running? Is he in NRM? Is he out of NRM? The statement at Makerere was suggesting that he's remaining in NRM. Does this mean that his difference with NRM is in principle, or is it purely political? And by that I mean, is he simply seeking power, or are there very important principles, political and otherwise, that distinguish him from the president and that have caused so much rift between him and the party? We are not sure about that. So if he remains to fight within the party, does he then disavow the grounds upon which he claims to have had the rift with the president? And by the way, let me just, Mr. Mbabazi, if you're watching, I'm not sure about your wife as well. Is she in the NRM? Is she out of the NRM? She's locked out of the meeting?
Does it really matter where they belong? And then the other question is, I'll be putting this question a little later, but the first question is, if, like there is thinking out there, that one of the options is try to exploit a run that denies Mr. Museveni an outright victory, to force a runoff and then coalesce forces. There's also thinking that Amama Mbabazi has been meeting opposition leaders. Mr. Sejusa, General Sejusa, has also been meeting lots of groups. The Democratic Party the other day was considering and announcing that it might consider to have him run on the party ticket. So he's been meeting, he's met Norbert a number of leaders. I don't want to mention names now, but he's met a number of leaders from the opposition. And one thinks that either he brings something from his long association with Mr. Museveni and the National Resistance Movement, he brings a lot of advantages with his experience as a military general, or he brings a lot of advantages as having served for long in the intelligence circles, areas that Museveni might be vulnerable in. So people are thinking, if you have David Sejusa, who was the best man to retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye at his wedding, you have Amama Mbabazi, you have the former Vice President, Gilbert Bukenya, you have the likes of Kizza Besigye himself, you have the likes of General Mugisha Muntu. If these forces create that critical number in the opposition, can't they still impact? But
that is the issue. The question is if. And you ask the question in a very, very interesting and fascinating way. If they can unite. Bukenya, Sejusa have all visited the Democratic Party. Are they going to run on the Democratic Party ticket? By the way, so has Haji Sebagala. Are they going to run on the Democratic Party ticket? Mbabazi, in the meantime, is saying he is committed to remaining in the NRM, in the movement. If he remains in the movement and he challenges the president, that is a non-issue, because as far as the NRM is concerned, there's only one flag bearer. So the other issue has something to do with time. We're almost into May, and we're getting closer and closer to the election. And yet all these questions are still hovering as to who will run, when will they run, on whose ticket will they run, and as time goes by, the NRM consolidates its hold, both as an organization and structure.
Okay. Mbabazi said something interesting. He said, intelligence is knowing what to say. Wisdom is knowing when to say it. And he's played the waiting game and kept everybody guessing. And people think it's given him massive media publicity, unpaid for. It's given him massive cleansing of his name from the old Mbabazi people knew, who was very close to President Yoweri Museveni, who was blamed together with President Museveni, and created the necessary gap between the two leaders. Honorable Kamia, if I could put this to you, will Sejusa and Mbabazi alter the landscape going to 2016? And people say Mbabazi's strategy has been keep them guessing. And when he said at Makerere, he said, intelligence is knowing what to say. Wisdom is knowing when to say it. And people think, okay, now he said another thing. So people run a story about him announcing when he will announce.
And by the way, before Honorable Kamia answers this question, we had a brief conversation about it while we were waiting for this recording. And she shared with me that this is very strategic. So I can't wait to hear how Betty's theory on this issue.
First of all, it's a pity that Ugandans have been sucked in to watch this drama between three people who are fighting each other, not really fighting for Uganda. People must note the difference. It is survival of the smartest. For Sejusa, it's even worse. Clearly, he's holding the president at some ransom. No one can behave like that and get away with it. No one. Mm-hmm. And no one should get away with it. Because this country is governed, is supposed to be governed according to the law, which Sejusa is fighting for. So when Sejusa goes out and says the things he does and does the things he does with the absolute impunity, you don't need rocket science to see that clearly he's got some bargaining chips with him. And the president is playing his time. He's not stupid. He is also, he knows when he will pounce. Mm. So it depends on who pounces first. And that's it. But their game...
Does Sejusa contain the metal to pounce? Because that's the big question. Mm-hmm. Professor Bongoya here says, that one, he's basically written him off. Because
no,
of
I have too.
Yes.
I have.
He has no relevance
think that
whatsoever.
Sejusa is a problem.
Yeah.
He's only the problem to Museveni. Because he has something, clearly, that he's using to hold the president at ransom, blackmail or whatever. It's obvious. I don't need to be... It's not a thriller. It's a B movie. I mean, it's not like a thriller where you don't know
there's no
what's going
suspense.
to happen. No, there's no suspense.
There is no suspense anywhere. It's kind of like,
no
are you kidding us?
But Sejusa, and he says it, I think he said recently, that his mission is to get rid of Museveni. I mean, it's such a small mission for Uganda. Uganda has years ahead, even, has got issues, so many issues. But Sejusa says, my mission is to get rid of Museveni. He does not show us the bigger picture.
But Honorable, it's interesting you say that he's holding him at ransom, that Sejusa is holding the president at ransom. What does that mean? What does that mean?
Clearly, if he's daring Museveni to act, he is daring President Museveni to arrest him. And President Museveni...
If he got arrested,
and
what will he get out of it?
No, he's daring him. He knows he can't.
If he got arrested, what would happen?
No, that's what I'm saying. He's daring him because he knows he's got something on him that he knows the president will probably not arrest him.
But that's what everybody said about Henry Tumukunde. He's since gone quiet. Museveni managed to keep him under incarceration for almost a year.
People have different bargaining chips. Maybe Tumukunde's chips were not as heavy as Sejusa's.
Isn't that speculation?
Chris. No, it is not. No, but you didn't allow me to finish it because to finish this one. So as far as I'm concerned, I agree with the professor that Sejusa is more of a drama, is it a drama king or drama queen or whatever? Just give.
Of course, he can't be a drama queen.
He's a drama prince.
He's a drama prince. Mbabazi on the other side, and Sejusa will not take away any votes from Museveni, and will not add any votes to the opposition. So Sejusa has nothing he's being on the table. That's except drama. A bit of drama.
What about Mbabazi?
Mbabazi is different.
Why makes him different?
Because I think that Mbabazi can take away from Museveni. Mbabazi, there are many movement people who think there should be a change, but they're comfortable with a change within the movement and with somebody like Mbabazi, And Mbabazi, having worked for so long, really he deeply ingrained himself so much in the bone marrow of what is happening that I think he knows the movement or the party more than President Museveni himself knows it.
Let me throw that question to Chris. Just right there. Let me throw that question to Chris. Every time someone breaks ranks with Museveni, or appears to have broken ranks with Museveni, the biggest selling proposition for that person is that they know Museveni very well. People have said that of Sejusa, former coordinator of intelligence agencies, he was in the bush with Museveni, he comes from the same clan as Museveni, he's from...
Yeah, but nobody's giving him so much attention.
All those sorts of things. Then Amama Mbabazi, people say, you know Amama Mbabazi, he's worked with Museveni. The other day he said, I have known President Museveni for the last 48 years, so no one knows him better than I do. And people have been saying, you know, now you have... Can these guys alter? You listen to Professor and you listen to Betty Kamya.
The Seychelles, the only person who broke ranks with Museveni is Dr. Kizza Besigye. And he broke ranks based on a value system.
A set of principles.
Any other person is a masquerader. They're only attempting to follow what Besigye has done. But Besigye is miles apart. Even if Besigye today went back and sat at home, he has played a commendable duty in this country. Even if Besigye died now, what Besigye has done within the time he has done, none of these Sejusas can do in another 30 years to come. So I don't know why we are being reduced to keep believing these people. It's of course propaganda. And that's why I have a similar thinking like the professor, and I've said that always here. These two people, be it Sejusa and Mbabazi, one have a right to participate in any political activity in this country. Nobody can stop them, Sejusa and Mbabazi. But they must be reminded they also have a duty to be accountable. And that's where my departure with them starts. Who is Sejusa?
Yes.
First of all, this man called Sejusa, today he's in a church. Oh, me, I'm born again. I don't run politics. The next day he's saying parties are not serious. Removing Museveni doesn't require these parties who are just weak. Another day, I'm mobilizing all parties. So I think as a country, we may be neglecting our duty to settle down Sejusa. They might be restless for attention. And as a citizen, senior to that, the country needs to pay attention to what exactly is making him the way he behaves. And perhaps we have a solution to his problem. Now, he has made us believe his problem is political. I think it is not political. It's to do with the person of Sejusa. And he is never accountable to anyone. Sejusa, that's the problem. And why do I think that...
I don't regret.
You see the point?
Loose translation of that name.
Whatever
Which he adopted.
First of all, a man who adopts a name at 60s, there's a problem.
Yes, he's pointing, Chris is pointing at an important point.
So I'm telling you...
The change of names itself is an identity crisis that is deeply rooted within the character of the man.
Maybe the professor who does psychoanalysis would help us. If you look at Sejusa from that psychoanalysis perspective, what elements do you find could be missing? And it's helped. Then, what is the impetus for him to behave the way he behaves? I have asked you several times on this show. Let us examine each of us. Who is Sejusa politically? Who is he militarily, that he claims to be a general? Who is he economically? And who is he socially? Americans are good at that. You don't come into the scene from nowhere. So this Sejusa, what production activities has he ever engaged in for his livelihood? This is a gentleman who I'm told owns a ranch. How did he get a ranch? What else is he involved in? So people who have got used to budgetary allocation should not be used to dupe this country.
Let's take a break. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll be picking up this discussion because the heat up to the run-up, the heat in the run-up to the 2016 general elections is actually beginning in earnest. And I said we're in Mbarawa trying to do what is being called votability to get people to participate in the processes. But Betty Kamya here, maybe I didn't introduce her fully to you, and but our viewers, I believe most of our viewers know her very well. She ran as a candidate in the 2011 general election. And the question she raises, I think she raises one fundamental. Who will take votes away from Museveni? Can anyone take votes away from Museveni? And maybe that's another discussion.
I said Sejusa can't, Mbabazi can't.
Yes, and we need to understand how much can he dent Museveni's chances. After a short commercial break. Right back. You're still watching The Fourth Estate, coming to you live from NTV in Kampala. And we have Betty Olive Turomwe Namisango Kamya, president of the Uganda Federal Alliance. She was an aspirant for the presidency
Still.
in the 2011 elections, and she says she is still. Although I've had people talk about, you seeking to take that same route, but through Parliament.
Yeah, but that doesn't take out my aspiration.
The aspiration
In the
remains.
future.
Right.
Okay.
And she does look very presidential this evening, doesn't she?
Professor Joshua Rubongoya from Roanoke College in Virginia, United States. And then, of course, Chris. Chris, you talked about Sejusa. What
Yes.
about Amama Mbabazi? And I like you also to talk about, they're trying to do these outreaches. Out of nowhere, Sejusa arrives at the Mary Stewart box, courtyard, quadrangle, to address students. Box and between Box and Lumumba. And he addresses and says, for us, when we fought during our time, we never stole gongom, which is the symbol of Lumumba. And they're trying to reach out to a young section of the audience, trying to mobilize them. Then Amama Mbabazi was at the College of Engineering, also addressing a similar audience. And they're expecting that this is going to come out and resonate. They're trying to mobilize a critical segment because Sejusa was, those emerged from those student politics.
Again, that is part of the game. With Sejusa, I think I've closed that. I think he shows the indiscipline that is inherent in him. Even when he talks about institutions, he's still in the UPDF serving. Even if you want to remove Museveni, you don't begin by undermining the principles of the very institution you serve. The institution says you're not retired, but for you, you are retired on your own. So if you are rebellious against institutions, what guarantee do we have that you can build those institutions compared to Museveni? So I dismiss him completely. But he has a right to be a politician, even if he needs some attention from psychoanalysts like the professor. But for Mbabazi's sake, I wish Charles will develop a critical thinking in our country, especially at high institutions of learning. Students have always been used, but students who are taught political science should be able to look at history, look at the events, what we are going to do, and show the players. Students should help the country set the required political fundamentals, because our politics are playing with very wrong fundamentals. The first point I would ask the students to have asked Mbabazi, what are the problems bedeviling Makerere University? And a man who had been in the core, like Betty says, in the blood, what did he do to uplift the quality of a graduate from Makerere University? And those are the same graduates saying, oh, this is our man. So, Professor, you who teach, I think you have a lot more to do on critical thinking. It's not about just following somebody who has come because she has sent advance 2 million for organizing a function. Then you begin jumping and you prostrate. No, you must ask the fundamentals that we as students, we are just the present and the future of this country. And Makerere was called an ivory tower. You've forgotten the falling fences, you have forgotten the unpaid lecturers, you have forgotten those sweepers there, you have forgotten the killings in the university by the same people who run government. And then you are the very people who are running at anyone. You should be asking critical questions that somebody who comes to you merits your attention. Not because he has come.
Chris, if we have run elections, or if we've run our politics for the last 52 years of our independence, and we haven't asked those 50 years, this is the 51st, I think, the 52nd year, for that time, and we haven't engaged ourselves in the critical thinking. You have an election falling next year. By the look of things, it might happen, or it will happen. If it happens, you're pulling from the same population that doesn't engage in critical thinking. But so the question is, who can alter that landscape?
I guess I'm asking the students. I'm looking at the fundamental. The students can't.
No,
Mbabazi cannot.
Yeah.
So, and you see, let students be told about the future. For me, Chris Obore, my future I looked forward is today. And there's my student, their future is today. It is the babies who are told in the future and at nursery school. For me, the future I hoped for is now. And I must live in that future. I must correct it. But the problem is people think the future is tomorrow. They are hoping to get a job. We are already beyond 18, you're an adult. So the point, Charles, critical here is, from Mbabazi dilly-dallying, he's saying this, he's saying that. One question is, actually, Mbabazi is demonstrating disregard for those who support him.
Yes.
Whether you want to support, you say, no, wait, I will tell you. That is not politics.
I'm telling you when I will tell you.
I will tell you when I will do this. Already, when you're analyzing somebody, you know this person thinks we must go by what he thinks. It doesn't matter whether you are supporters or not. That's already a wrong strategy. Do the same Mbabazi if I subject him to accountability. Because much as you think he has power, he has moved. Charles, you were in the newsroom in 2001 when Garuga mocked Mbabazi. When Museveni, people will say Mbabazi was the insider. When Museveni was literally pleading with people in Kanungu to vote him, to return him to parliament.
He did actually, because he went to Kanungu and then brought them to a dinner at State House.
Exactly. So Museveni was begging, lobbying for a man you think is powerful to come to parliament. So it's the creation of Museveni. And I ask you from 2001 when who is the man, the rich man? Garuga said, your house even here is not worth my chicken building. Apparently that's the man who was economically challenged like anybody. At what point did he then become the giant he is?
No, but
and then, hold on, Charles. And then if he became a giant, through which production activities? That's critical thinking. But not just because now he has it and he can give, and then he say, that's the right man. Charles, those alliances you think they are looking for. Let me end and surrender the space to another person by saying, Charles, when lions and hyenas unite, it doesn't mean other animals in the national park should go and sunbathe.
Become safer. Okay. And Betty, you said you hadn't completed your thought.
Yes.
And Chris brings something interesting. You say Mbabazi is in the blood of the thing. That was the image you used.
In the bone marrow.
In the bone marrow, yes.
He worked his way to the bone marrow.
Of what? Of Museveni, of the NRM,
both.
of governance in the country?
Both, nearly both. All. And I don't want to, if somebody works their way from the bottom to the top, I don't want to hold them down by remembering that they were down there. What I would like to deal with is the person here now. Because people have different ways of working their way up. Others kill, others rob, others lick us, as they say. Forgive the...
Well, that's the word being used, so you're being honest.
Others lick. But it depends on where they want to go and eventually whether you get it. You know Machiavelli, he said the end justifies the means. So it doesn't matter where Mbabazi started from. What we are dealing with is the Mbabazi who is in the bone marrow.
Why do you think he can take away
in the bone marrow?
Museveni?
In the bone marrow of the movement, even nearly of Mr. Museveni and of governance. One, as I said, traditionally, there are two communities in Uganda. Now, contemporary, not traditionally. The NRM, NRM and Musevenists, and then the opposition, and even anti-Musevenists. You know, there are some that are anti. So, Mbabazi is not going to, what he's going to bring to the opposition are some of the NRM people, and there are many who think that 30 years is a long time and it's time to move on to someone else. But my problem with Mbabazi, my big problem with Mbabazi, he is a status quo person. His only problem is Museveni. Even Sejusa, if you like. But Sejusa, I don't understand it. He's a very complicated, I don't know what he wants. But Mbabazi is a movement person and a status quo person. And he was working his way to the top in the movement. He did not have problems with the movement. And he doesn't seem to have problems with the movement system or with the movement management, governance of this country. His only problem is that Museveni stood in his way of getting to the top. Doesn't matter.
He didn't shift in the queue.
He did not shift in the queue.
He got to the queue because Mbabazi invented the queue.
And he has worked so well to get there. So really the problem with the, to answer your question, Mbabazi can't take a significant number of people in the NRM from Museveni. If he has as much money as we hear that he has, it's probably dwindling very fast. You know how fast it's dwindling extremely fast. He doesn't have the sources of the money that his position as Prime Minister.
The tap can't keep running.
It's dwindling very fast. And I think even the friends abroad whom you look to funding you will only fund you when they are sure that you're really going to.
But I disagree. Where I disagree with Honorable Kamya is the idea that Mbabazi can take away a lot or significantly from Museveni. I doubt that that is the case. Why? Because what the counterintuitive impression that I get is that the rise of Mbabazi and his seeming alienation by the NRM seemed to bring together the core, the rank and file of the party, to say anyone who wishes to divide and fragment the party and weaken it, given that this is ours to keep, must be alienated, and we unite against him.
Professor, do you know how much resource in terms of effort, in money, in time that the president has used this whole year? All he has done this whole year is to quell the Mbabazi factor.
I understand that.
Prof, that raises the most important question.
Yes.
Mbabazi's silence and refusal or failure to make an announcement and give direction on where he plans to go, which you have debated on this show repeatedly, has created one thing. When he's kept everybody guessing, in my opinion, when he's hung his supporters to dry, because Museveni has been able either to reach out to them and buy them or intimidate them into submission. We hosted here, Chris was raising the other day, we've hosted some young people who were supporters of Mbabazi from the NRM Poor Youth. They leave the show after some time, and then you hear them trying to attempt a demonstration, and the next time you find them driving very powerful vehicles, and they are no longer NRM Poor Youth, and people asking,
Chris,
what happened to the NRM Poor Youth? Now, let me just finish this. When you look at the opportunity he has afforded Museveni to consolidate himself,
yes,
the rallying he has, his alienation from the NRM has created among the rank and file of the NRM, starting with the young people, the Anites, and that group, to the elders within the party, the John Nagendas, the Kintu Musokes, who have rallied in public comments to distance themselves from Mbabazi. Who can he take away?
That's my point precisely. And by the way, starting at Makerere University is not going to change anything, because as Chris, I like Chris's analysis. At Makerere University, first of all, those who attended the rally are a minority of the university itself. So the fact that he went there and spoke and made all these pronouncements to a
He didn't make much, actually, because he said, I will announce when I will announce.
He didn't say much. Those who attended this rally, if we can call it a rally, are a minority at the university. So there is no impact there. Secondly, he has, as I mentioned,
politics. They're always, they go with the they're rebellious. Student politics.
Right, but that is not going to shift the fundamentals, the political fundamentals in the country. It's not going to happen. But to follow what Chris was saying, what is going on now is that we are hoodwinked in thinking that these two people are going to change the country and move it in a different direction. And it is distracting us from discussing, the real fundamental issues that affect this country, as Honorable Kamya is talking about. And these issues are as follows. The very high unemployment rate in Uganda. Nobody is discussing that, and especially among the youth, some of whom are supposedly at Makerere University.
They're waiting for the future, Chris said.
So nobody's discussing this question. Nobody is questioning the levels of poverty, where we have hundreds and millions of people who only have one piece of cassava every day and who have nowhere to live. We are not discussing that issue. Thirdly, we are not discussing the fundamentals of this question. How do we create the political space for there to be contestation among parties, among civil society groups that can change the fundamental political substructure of the country? Nobody's discussing that. In the meantime, it's Sejusa.
I think it's not Mbabazi, fair to say nobody's discussing that, Professor.
No, I'm saying in the media. I'm saying in the media and in the national conversations.
I think the conversation in Uganda started with all that. That's why people offered themselves with alternative policies on employment, on service delivery, on everything. The word service delivery is on everybody's mouth, on every media house's studio, every day. The fundamental question, and yes, you said it at the end, the fundamental question is, if the government of the day does not deliver on my expectations, how do I change it? Or why is it not possible to have a government of my choice? that is the fundamental that we
Charles,
talk about. And I think that we need to raise the bar. Otherwise, those questions you're talking about, Professor, of the service delivery, of employment, or whatever, it's like you're waiting here at the bridge, you know? But you need to cross the bridge before you get there.
Right, but what I'm saying is that those are the issues themselves are not on the table.
Because I and Chris, having served in the media for quite a bit of time now, we wake up every morning and do nothing but discuss what you're calling the fundamental question. The issue, why we spend a lot of time discussing politics, is that the lock to addressing, to opening to those fundamental questions, the solutions to those fundamental questions, rests in the politics, because politics allocates resources. And the question is, President Museveni has been at it for the last 29 years. It will be 30 years in January next year. Amama Mbabazi has been with Museveni for as long. David Sejusa fought with Museveni to try and address those fundamental questions. And the same questions remain. You see them in Apa village, in Amuru and Ajumani, old women undressing, because they're asking those fundamental questions. You see it in the failed healthcare system. You see it in an education system that can't guarantee jobs that you're talking about. Who is at the center of unlocking that? It is the politicians we're discussing. And people are saying, like you said, does Amama Mbabazi provide the alternatives that can address those questions?
No,
does Sejusa? Does Betty Kame, because she's been a candidate? Does Kiza Besigye? Does Mugisha Muntu? Does Nandala Mafabi? Does
whether we do what, whether we say what, my thinking is that most of these people you see coming out today to pretend to be leaders, and yet they have been inside, are actually trying to run away from accountability. Their hour of contention has come. While in power, they shortcut the citizen in order for them to gain a life of luxury. But you know, there's always the 40th hour. Some are trying to be clever by perpetuating themselves in public life to avoid the real questions as to how they are living the way they are living. And some of them think they are now using what they benefit from the state to continue fooling the country that they are now pro-citizens. No, the fundamental issues are we must have a baseline for anyone who seeks to lead us. One of those is the ability to account for what they have been doing while entrusted the public office. The escapist point now is Museveni's longevity, which is also a fact. But that alone is not enough, like Betty says. Museveni has been longer in power, but you are part of that longevity. Okay, Museveni will account for his longevity, account for your short time in power and what you own. They will escape. They will call you the Museveni apologies. They will call you this. And Mbabazi is, by the way, a terrible coward. As people are not seeing. Mbabazi is fearing to collapse alone. He's mobilizing such that by the time that collapse comes, he has a few people who call themselves NRM following him. He is trying to push Museveni up to the NRM delegates conference. He is trying to, the moment he says he's not in NRM, that is the end of him. He's very clever, that angle. So he's trying to push himself and say, no, I'm there, using the money. You see, the problem is, you say Museveni is using money. Is Mbabazi using bananas? If Museveni is getting money from the state coffers, then where does Museveni get his bananas? How many acres of plantain does he have? We're not asking those questions. Yes, Museveni is using state resources. What about you? And how did you get that?
Has he unleashed the resources?
I'm asking. That is the kind of accountability I would want citizens to ask, such that Museveni, who's in the power, knows the Oboros are asking questions. Even those aspiring to go there, Betty knows Oboro will ask me questions. Others are dodging. And then they say, I'm movement. I built a movement. Did you build a movement to destroy Makerere? Did you build a movement to create issues in Apa?
Coming
I
up,
don't like
we
that.
will be discussing what does this mean, because every time we discuss, and as Chris says, if you dismiss anybody who emerges as a challenger to President Yoweri Museveni, others will think you're trying to endorse Museveni, but others will think that you're creating Museveni as a behemoth who can't be pushed. How does that get dealt with, and how will that impact the next election? After a short commercial break, we'll be right back. Welcome back to the last segment of the Fourth Estate, and we're discussing, can Sejusa and Amama Mbabazi alter the political landscape heading into the 2016 elections? In the last two segments, we discussed about the personalities and the individuals involved, and the fundamental question of, are we sidestepping discussion on issues as we focus on these individuals? The question is, when you discuss the way we do sometimes, and like we've been discussing here, is there will be a question about the discussion about President Yoweri Museveni. Is he hitting a home run in 2016 elections? And if everyone who has emerged to attempt to challenge him has been cut down to size, what does that mean? Let me start with you, Prof. When Besigye emerged in 2001, people said, you see Besigye is bitter. You see Besigye has these issues. You see, and all sorts of stories emerged. Though, as Chris says, one in his first run, in spite of the allegations about the malpractices, Betty was in the thick of that, should remember, he managed to raise more than 3 million votes at that stage. In the subsequent run, he also managed about 2 million votes. And Betty said, Amama Mbabazi can take away. The question is, from Museveni, does that make Museveni unchallengeable if most of his opponents are dismissed as not matching up to him?
Well, at the risk of being attacked by Honorable Kamia, I believe that we have a serious leadership crisis. We just had an election in Nigeria. And in Nigeria, Buhari was re-elected. And my debate with my friends has been, can you imagine an entire country like Nigeria, having dropped Goodluck Jonathan, decides to go back to a washed-out former military dictator, benign or benevolent as he may have been, to become president of Nigeria? This is a crisis, a leadership crisis that bedevils us in Africa. Now, coming into Uganda, there is a leadership crisis. And that's why Museveni sometimes appears like someone who is...
What does leadership crisis mean?
By leadership crisis, I'm suggesting that if we look, for example, at the alternatives, okay? If we look at the alternatives...
Isn't that a faulty argument?
What's wrong with the alternatives?
Someone will raise the question and say, Yoweri Museveni, 1980, going into the December elections, was a non-entity.
No, but I don't even understand. Charles, I've always argued about that. Whoever is voted into office is given instruments of office. The laws, the constitution, the judiciary, parliament to make laws. You don't need to be, it's us who think that somebody has got to be extra whatever it is. So it's not the leadership crisis. The crisis is that the system does not, the system tilts all the ammunition on the side of the incumbent.
That may be the case, but that is
just a moment, Professor. Exactly what you're raising. This country has had changes of leaders 8 times.
Yes.
Some stayed for as short as 68 days. They had exactly the same.
No, they didn't have exactly.
No, they had exactly the same things you're talking about. They had the constitution, they had the laws, they had the treasury, they had the military. You would say?
No, it's not the same.
Some leaders were able to hold out. Museveni has held out for 30 years now.
You know,
yes.
it's not exactly the same. It's not exactly the same. Because a person like Professor Lule, who held a government for 68 days, you know that Lule did not come as himself. You know, he was not so involved in the struggle. First of all, you needed to.
Let's speak to the crisis that he's talking about. The leadership crisis that he's talking about.
This is the leadership crisis I'm talking about. If we look at our political parties,
by leadership crisis, he seems to be saying, if you look at the opposition, as if people in the opposition do not measure up to Mr. Museveni. You are looking at individuals. I am looking at systems.
We may talk about systems, but we cannot talk about systems as macro organizations without talking about those who exist in the system and make the system work. If you look at, by leadership crisis, I'm specifically talking about the following realities. That are we expecting that in 2016, the Uganda People's Congress is going to win this election? Given
fault is it?
Why can't it?
Exactly, that's where I'm going.
It's the voter, it's not the leader.
Exactly, that's where I'm going. The voters, the citizens, are looking at the Uganda People's Congress. They're looking at the crisis within the party. They're looking at the fragmentation that exists in the party. And they're looking at its alternative. Its alter ego may be the Democratic Party. And that is not very different. The FDC itself does not offer a real viable alternative given the leadership. Again, because the parties are very personalistic in their nature.
And I took you back to 1980 when Yoweri Museveni stood on the UPM. The UPM was not a party, obviously, that would deliver him to power. President Museveni, as an individual, wasn't a person Ugandans looked to as a person who would run this country as a president. He finds an alternative, and he's managed to hold on to power for the last 30 years. Now, if you say there is a leadership crisis and the individuals involved... The
UPC used to say that. In the UPC government of 1980, they would say, we don't see an alternative. Exactly the same thing.
Every government says there's no alternative.
You keep saying there's no alternative.
Before you kill the professor, I think what the professor is saying is a very true thing. But he's not addressing why the situation is the way it is. And if I may be permitted to attempt to address it, and I will still use the example of Kizza Besigye. Let me even compare him with Amama Mbabazi. Kizza Besigye, at the time he decided to stand for president, he was not, first of all, a household name. Two, he was not a man of means. He was surviving. But what drove Besigye to be what he is? The charisma, the commitment, and his personal attributes. He never wavered, said, I am standing for this, and I will stand for that. To the point today, if you dropped Besigye in the remotest village in Patong, the whole village will run to say Besigye is here.
So why are you saying
but if you dropped Amama Mbabazi in Ikabong, the Canadian may think some Somali has passed there. You get the point? But the two are leaders at national level. I'm trying to say one arose out of charisma, personal attributes. Amama Mbabazi arises from the ability to have influence, power. And the power is military and the power is economic. The two cannot match the charisma. Because basically now, if the professor says there are no people, there are no leaders, it falls short in that it is not the absence of leaders, it is the absence of a field to play leadership.
Opportunity.
Yes, exactly. This is what I mean here. If you look at that parliament, which I like bashing all the time, because dominated by majority self-seekers, there's a sprinkling of leadership there. Segona is a young lawyer, but very brilliant. He can be this country's very good attorney general. When you see Wafula good leader of opposition, he's just a leader. But however good they are spending time in the pond surviving crocodiles than offering leadership. Because the field is full of crocodiles. And now,
who are those crocodiles?
The crocodiles are these people who, when they go to power, the most important thing they engaged in was amass wealth, deny citizens services so that they become dependent on you. And now they are using that advantage to deny Betty Kamia to come out with her charisma, with her convictions, and be listened to. They will pay people to whom she's supposed to address. So you cannot say, Professor, that because Betty Kamia has been heckled by people instigated by money, booze, she's not a good leader. No. Let us deal, how do we kill these crocodiles so that we allow people who want to live
but some of the crocodiles we're talking about are internal within the political parties themselves. Exactly. I have been witness to the back and forth between Olaro Tunu and Pulkol. The back and forth between the two leaders, the so-called two leaders of the UPC.
That's ideological contestation. Don't mistake that for crocodile.
It's not only ideological.
It's ideological.
It's not only ideological, but it also has something to do with the accusation of one having misappropriated funds from the other.
Let me tell you.
And by the way, that is within the party. Then let me finish. Let's go to the FDC.
In the UK,
I have talked to Nandala Mafab. And Nandala Mafab says, look, these people, Mujisha Muntu and company, They have taken our party to a very wrong place. So there's a back and forth between the two of them within the same party. That is what I mean by leadership crisis.
That is the strategic departure, not the
Isn't that exactly where
power struggles
your
are everywhere.
argument falls short or becomes faulty? To say there is a crisis of leadership. When out of 34 million Ugandans, you're pointing out names, the difference is they might have those disagreements. Can they fail to lead? If you sort out what makes the differences between Olaro Tuno and Jimmy Akena and David Purcell, you have three alternatives, and out of the three alternatives, you're trying to ask who can be a better leader. So we tear apart, like Chris was saying, we understand. If this person has money, how did they get the money? If they have been in a position of leadership, how did they lead? And then out of those you say,
this is the right man.
Chris talks about crocodiles. Even among very bad people, you have those who can provide
Charles, the FDC would have a very big problem if challenging the elections that might be run by Haji Badu Chigundu when they themselves are in the wrangle of an election of their own. And their own election within the party is contested by different wings of the party, and they say that the elections themselves were rigged within the FDC, right? So the question then becomes: if you are a voter, and you're saying these are the parties that are running, and you're trying to choose an alternative, and you're looking at what's going on internally, how do you come to challenge this election?
I've not given the opportunity for some time. Let me just finish this with Rwangoya. What environment created Yoweri Museveni of 1986 that couldn't create him in 1980?
Well, first of all, let's talk about time. If we're talking about 1980, Uganda in 2015 is a very different country. So I think you're talking about the circumstances, the conditions, the political conditions, the material conditions of our society, and politically where we have moved from and where we want to move to. So if you then argue that, look, in 1980, we had a so-called contested election by the Uganda People's Congress. The president then goes to the bush and fights to restore.
Yoweri Museveni then goes to the bush.
Goes to the bush and fights to restore a stolen election, right? So
he wasn't stolen from him.
That's what he argued. No, that's what he argued. That's what he argued.
I know you again said that, yes, the alternatives are there, because between 1980 to 2015, 2016, the population has grown, there are more educated people, there are more people with means. You expect that the pool of potential leaders has expanded exponentially. And it has. That wouldn't be talking about a crisis of leadership.
That's what one would expect.
We do not have a crisis of leadership. We have a crisis of the system that allows leaders to come and go according to the will of the people. That is the crisis that we have a system. The difference between the Museveni of 1985 and the Museveni of 2016 or 15 is that the Museveni of 1965 did not have
1980 and 1986
did not have the resources that the Museveni of today has. And the same problem happened to the Amin of 1960 and the Amin of 1972 and happened to the Obote of 1962 and the Obote of 1966. Once you get this absolute power over centralized power, and this has been the argument of my party, is that once somebody is sworn in, they give him a constitution that hands him all the ammunition he needs to stay in power. So the solution is to undo the system. And it's not just Uganda that needs to do it. It has been, we're not reinventing the wheel. It has been done before. It has been done in Kenya. It has been done in South Africa, in America, in Belgium, in the UK. Everywhere, people decentralize, devolve power.
Okay.
Because over-concentration of power creates a dictator.
Okay.
And that's what we need to deal with. The center of power being one.
I'm sure that I'm about to be one that our time is run short. So I need to give you the last opportunity, just in case I don't have an opportunity to come back to you. What impacts the 2016 election, given what we've been discussing?
Well, the 2016 elections, as I've said it before, it is still very much the system. Here is a president who has all the money, who has the army, was all the institutions, all, and I'm talking about 285. People are just talking about the Electoral Commission. But I'm talking about 285 institutions.
What impacts the 2016 election?
What impacts the 2016 election is what impacted them in that election, that the president has all the ammunition.
So we're going into a ritual. Won't change a thing.
Largely.
Charles,
Charles, the professor will wind up as
Let
a
me come to
guest.
Chris and then you'll wind up.
Okay.
Charles, the truth is, I want to inform Professor here. You need to rethink that crisis. Because even the movement you're talking about, people will vilify NRM, but they are very important people in NRM would offer this country a good direction. The trouble is, they are the younger crocodiles among the king lions. So they have not even given the opportunity to exploit what they would be as leaders. But they are there. So when we talk about a crisis, I see we have more of a crisis of values that is impacting on our leadership.
Than a crisis of leaders.
Than a crisis of leaders. There is no person, not even Museveni, who can say is greater than a community called Uganda. However powerful you are, the community is capable of replenishing its leaders. You go away, they will be better leaders. People will even say, what were you doing with the other one? So it is a delusion by people that they can master community. That's what I'm saying. A community is like a springboard. You can press it down, but once it is puts you off, it throws you away.
Okay.
So we have in Soroti, we have Angelina Sege, FDC, very powerful woman, very powerful leader. But you know, to you to become a political actor, you must have influence. Where do you get the influence? It begins from a constituency. That is the domain, political domain. You must have it. What are the conditions for you to get the political domain? Professor comes from the Virginia with the old ideas. He goes to a community with a good manifesto. Obore goes there with a sack in the boot. Says, come. School fees, come. School fees, come. Does it mean Obore has been a better leader than Rubongoya? Not at all. So let's address that. That is inhibiting us from allowing people who are talented in leadership to come
and emerge
as leaders. Right now, what will impact 2016 is simply two factors. One, money from either side. And then, of course, the trouble we have had is our President Museveni. We should not be wasting time asking him to leave Betty. If you can, tell scientists to look for a vaccine to vaccinate President Museveni against the fear of losing power. If you have the vaccine, inject him, you'll have your problem sorted.
Okay. Professor Mbabazi, I put a direct question to you.
Yes.
What will impact the 2016 election?
What will impact the 2016 election is simply this, and this is what excites me about the Ugandan political system. At the local levels, it's going to be competitive. At the local levels, it's going to be competitive, and I see a degree of change as far as those local level elections are concerned. At the national election, at the level of the presidential election, I think we should get the 3 trillion shillings or so that we're going to spend and build a beltway around Kampala to undo the jam and build hospitals and schools.
And
what does that
let
mean?
Museveni continue to lead?
That we shouldn't have an election?
Stay in power?
I'm suggesting the following, that the outcome for 2016 is no longer debatable.
Is a done deal.
What is that?
Yes.
What is that outcome?
The president is going to win.
So how would you have determined the people's choice as a political scientist?
Look.
That is your choice.
Yeah, good question.
How would you have determined that the people of Uganda have decided that the money be taken to build a railway around Kampala?
We can make the following argument, right? That look, if the vast majority of the Ugandans are going to benefit from better hospitals, from better schools, from better infrastructure, to me, that money will benefit the people of Uganda better than the idea that we're going to spend let me finish. Than the idea that we're going to spend 3 trillion shillings to try and change, to try and determine what is already a done deal in my mind.
Professor, I am asking Professor, how does my mother in Bukedea participate in that decision?
Chris, our time is out.
Which one?
The one of deciding to take money to build the railway.
And lady, our time
this
is
is what I'm suggesting. Your mother is going to be involved in the local
How?
election. In fact, the local representatives are more
If that was
important
it,
to
then
the
we should
people.
have stayed with the colonialism. They would have built
our time is out.
Because
Get
to
out
me,
of
the
here.
local level is
I'm
the
only
best way to
surprised
determine.
that Professor Rubongoya says, get the money, use it to build hospitals, when we have spent trillions
Building hospitals.
over the last 50 years of an independent Uganda, trying to fix those same things, and the crisis at the political level that allocates resources hasn't been resolved. So we have lousy hospitals, we have a lousy education system that don't function, that can't produce can't provide the people who come out of the system with jobs. And you say, it's a done deal, get the man and build a beltway around Kampala.
Right.
This is a fundamental disagreement between the two. We are not lacking money to build hospitals.
Thank you very much.
Management of
Thank you very much.
And
Thank you
politics,
very much.
Professor.
Professor Wongan, thank you very much. Christopher, thank you very much to all our viewers for joining us tonight.
Vaccinate the president against fear to lose power.
No,
Thank you.
Professor.
Who has the vaccine?
Time is up.
Who has the vaccine?
We are not lacking money. Not for lack of money, but